GTM Production presents Tom Mason does an interview with. Hello and welcome back to the third channel. Yes, we're back on the weird side doing another excellente, tripalante, amazing interview. And they're the words you use when you've swallowed a dictionary. And not by, I wouldn't recommend it. Susie Dent probably eats it on a regular basis because she's probably got a more up-to-date version, but I was eating the 2008 dictionary, so it didn't really help much because the English language have moved on and I still sound like I'm talking from the 70s, so I wouldn't recommend it. It's too thin. You need milk to tear it down. But we digress. My guest today is best known for being an author, comedian, and all-round amazing person. It's one and only Ian Moore.
Bonjour, Tom. Bonjour. I say that because I'm in France, so it's not just me being pretentious. I live in France, so I thought I'd give it the French stuff.
And so we shall start at the very beginning because Julie Andrews once said it's a good place to start, and so far I don't disagree with her. How
Yeah.
did you get into the world of comedy?
Completely by accident. I went to see a show with a friend, and it was the only comedy show I went to see. And she said at the end of the show, "What did you think?" And I was a typical bloke, and just said, "I said it was all right. I reckon I could do that." And just, never thought any more about it. And then she rang me up 2 weeks later and said, "Well, you put your money where your mouth is. I've just booked you a 5 minute open spot." And that's how it started. So this 5 minute open spot was in a pub in Tunbridge Wells. I don't have any connection with Tunbridge Wells other than that was my first gig. I'd never been there before, and that was the first one. So it was complete. It was never an ambition. It was never even on my radar.
And when you were doing your first gig, did you have any idea of what you were going to perform?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'd rehearsed it and written it quite tightly. There was no way that I was going to improvise in any way, to my mind, because I was already completely horrified at the fact that I was walking on stage anyway. So it was, yeah, I knew exactly what I was going to say. I knew exactly how I was going to fill my 5 minutes. But I don't remember a thing about it. I just got off, got off very quickly because I was so frightened.
Yeah. And are you the type of comedian that when they're doing an average night, do you go on stage and you've spent all day writing it and make sure you know exactly what you're saying, or do you do the Billy Collins when you just walk on and say whatever you feel like and then forget about it 20 minutes later?
Oh, well, it's always a mixture of the two. I think when you first start out, unless you are an incredibly confident person, then you know what you're going to say. You've rehearsed it and written it as tightly as you possibly can, or as your experience will allow at the time. And then as you go on, you can be a lot looser. It's always good to know how you're going to start because that's so vital to the rest of the gig. But yeah, it's as I got as I mean I started 30 years ago, so I can pretty much walk onto a stage now and not have anything necessarily planned, but I know that I've got weapons at
Yeah,
my disposal if I need them.
yeah. And one of the things you've done that some people would say it's a panel show, and some people, the correct people, would say it's not a panel show because it's a quiz show because points do matter. And so it's always a surprise all at the same time. What was it like appearing on Richard Osman's House of Games?
It was I absolutely loved it because we're huge fans of it here in my house. I've got my wife and our 3 kids. We're massive fans of it. So on the one hand, it was kind of weird being on one of your favorite programs anyway. But on the other hand, there was immense pressure from the family not to let anybody down and I really did feel that. And I was. It took me, I think, 3 or 4 questions on the first day of recording to get one right. and I could feel the pressure mounting as the longer it took. Um, so it was more. It was most important not to embarrass them. And in the end, because what happened was I won 4 days out of 5, but the day that I didn't win was the dartboard day, and my kids didn't speak to me for 6 months. So, in the end, I failed in their eyes.
And do you think, as a fan of the show, you felt you had more of an advantage because you knew what the rounds were like and you
Oh,
sort of
definitely.
went,
Definitely. I always get amazed when I see other people go on that show and they'll be surprised that a round is this or a round is that. I mean, and maybe this is more criticism of me than of them. I am so hyper competitive that even if I hadn't seen the show before, I would have made sure that I'd have watched repeats so that I could have any advantage I could leverage over anybody else without a doubt.
and I think that Richard Osman's House of Games is probably in the list of programs that you could watch on repeat because A, the programs are only good, and B, Dave runs a whole week of episodes in one night. You can start at 6 competing against BBC Two, and about 8 or 9 you've seen roughly about 20 odd episodes.
I've, I probably if they ever get around to recording Champion of Champions with me, which I'm desperate for, frankly, I would definitely go back and do that. Always.
Yeah, and I think that because of the success of, I'm going to say the format of House of Games, if we remove Richard from it for a second, I think what you could do is, even because there's not as many, unlike shows like Taskmaster, you could do an international champions and champions because they've got the Australian version with a woman that sounds so Australian, you can only ever say her last name in an Australian accent. Her name's Claire Hooper, but
Right.
in an Australian accent, the word Hooper is incredible.
Hooper.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Claire Hooper.
so it's in the same that it's practically the exact same show. It's just there's more lights and the chairs are a
Right.
lot more taller.
Okay.
They look like evil villains, as they
Do
say,
they,
from the cat.
they
Uh,
make it more comfortable.
yeah, and do you think why do you think that that's become such a popular show with not just regular people, but with the comedians that go on the show?
I think there's a couple of reasons there. One, comedians would do anything for money. And I don't think that should be underestimated. See the people who are on whatever that shark program is on ITV, but also it it is immense fun, but it's also a program that is kind of non-threatening in a sense that you don't have to attack your fellow competitors. It is a very friendly atmosphere, whereas the panel shows, and like you say, this one isn't a panel show, but panel shows are really, really ego competitive,
Hmm.
and they can be really tiring. I haven't, I've done a couple of things like that, but I just don't. It's not something it's too gladiatorial, I think.
And do you think that because when it happens a lot, and I mentioned this to someone I was interviewing, but it happens a lot with actors where they say, "Have you done a blah a blah?" And the shows that like most actors end up
Yeah.
you as guests. Do you think that for with comedians, do you think Richard Osman House of Games has become the "Have you done a House of Games?" Do you think that's become one of those talking points that all comedians like Taskmaster and like QI? Do you think that
Yeah.
Richard House of Games has become the every comedian wants to go on it?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's certainly an ambition of mine, and I know that some comedians who haven't been on it are kind of going, "Well, what am I the only comedian who hasn't been on it yet?" So there is that level of resentment, but not resentment, but kind of feeling a bit put out. Yes, definitely. Because I mean, it's prime time television for a start, and it's wonderful fun. It just is, like I say, because it was such a family event for us. It wasn't that I considered other comedians about it. It was just that I wanted to be on it, and I was actually on with another comedian. I was on with Jen Brister, Jen, who I know very well and have done for a long time, and like we met up. because it was filmed in Glasgow, and we met up the night before at the hotel and we had dinner, and it was all very lovely, all very friendly, very lovely. And then we got into the studio the next day, and the cameras start rolling, and the first question Richard asks of Jen is, "What do you want from this week?" And she just said, "I just want to destroy Ian Moore." And so all that conviviality and friendship had gone completely out the window. Um, and we had kind of set the tone for the week between us, which was a lot of fun because we're old mates, you know.
And with Taskmaster, the end goal really is to win the head, and you don't really care about winning some poxy prize that well you want to win your own thing back if you've given them your wedding ring or something that you really will regret giving. But
Yeah,
but with House of Games, I think that's the only thing where you can see that like most comedians care more about the prize. It's like the suitcase. Every time you see the suitcase, you know that if you see everyone trying to go to the Melbourne Comedy Festival, from it'll just be a lot of Richard Osman's faces. With,
Well, it's true. I mean, I don't know if you can see behind me, but that's one of Richard Osman's onesies
yeah,
hanging, hanging behind me. I've got the trophy up there in my office. There is a suitcase around here somewhere. The toolbox I use all the time. The shower curtain I haven't taken out of its packaging. I've got to be honest about that. But it is, and there's a kind of kitsch element to it. But my son, my younger son, uses my Osmond's House of Games suitcase all the time for school trips, which is really weird because obviously we're in France and they don't know who Richard Osman is. But I'm a bloke who's got glasses and a side parting, so they think I'm just really vain, and I've put my picture on the suitcase for my son.
and I think that and to put a nail in this coffin, but I think what I think makes Richard on the House game so interesting because he's done that type of competitive element. He's done Taskmaster, so he knows how to make sure that it's entertaining, but also keeps the competitive element because he's seen it happening
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Even
Oh,
though,
really? And also he is so quick. His mind is so quick, and he's completely at ease, and puts everybody else completely at ease, and more importantly, puts the audience completely at ease. It is a style of programming which I think is really is kind of, in a sense, comfort program. And I don't mean to damn that with faint praise at all. I think of things like The Repair Shop, Richard's House of Games, and Paul Whitehouse and Bob Mortimer Gone Fishing. That kind of thing where it's just you can just sit back and know that you're not going to get angry about anything. Um, so it's a real skill that, and Richard has it in spades.
and and you mentioned there about people watching without getting angry. I think the only person that can ever get angry at it is Richard Herring because it means because Jim Moyer's got the painting birds on Sky Arts, and so all the nice programs that
Yeah.
comedians want to do have been taken.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
it's
He
now
had a brief appearance on Gone Fishing, didn't he? But that was just to talk about his cancerous testicles. So it's not, I don't know if that's a career move for him, essentially.
well, he interviewed Jim Moyer and Nancy Moyer, and he mentioned how annoyed he was that they came up with the program before he did. He was absolutely gone with it. He was like, well, what's left for me? There's nothing. And that's a fair assumption, but it is one of those where you can just switch off and you don't have to. You can engage with it, but there's not really much
Yeah.
going on. So with Gone Fishing, the bit that it's got no narration over the top of it, so you are just watching
Yeah.
or having a laugh whilst trying to surreptitiously try to fish and try not to hurt the fish at the same time, which
I know it's a wonderful thing that, and also because I'm at that age. I'm 10 years younger than Bob Mortimer, 11, 12. Let's not split hairs. But I'm of that age where I am kind of a comedian who's a bloke who's is getting on and feeling those physical ailments that they talk about all the time, and the kind of not alienation with the rest of the society, but just going. No, I don't want to go out. I really do just want to sit on a riverbank. I mean, I don't fish at all, but I do sit on riverbanks, not harming anyone.
And I think that's one program no one's ever done when it's just like an hour or half an hour of someone just sat on a riverbank doing nothing much else.
Yeah,
It's no one's walking, no one's talking about anything, no one's walking toward a pub, just sat on a riverbank. So
yeah.
it's like Bill Bailey pub walks, it's more just riverbanking. But it's like
Yes, it is.
it's like
A river banking sounds like a really awful rhyming slang thing, so they probably that's why they didn't call it that.
yeah, because if it one of those where it'd be more gentle than
Yeah.
Canal Diaries, which you just a bloke on a canal washing and eating. It's the weirdest thing I've ever heard of. It was on yesterday,
Sounds idyllic.
and it's the celebrity goggle boxes. Jennifer Saunders really did not fancy it at all. It's a bloke, but it's a
Yeah.
whole hour of the bloke just narrating. Nothing
Right.
else.
Okay.
No sounds. No voiceover. It's just him.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm eating for my tea. Here's how I'm gonna have a shower. Oh no, my boat's too big. It's not gonna get under there. I'm gonna hurt myself.
That must be a weekly Jeopardy for him, you would have thought, taking the wrong turn.
Yeah, and and that was on yesterday in the U family, and that's a good segue. It's trying to make the greatest segue, but one of the things we worked on that it was one of those that it was really interesting, but it's sad that it's no longer widely available and it's no longer as easy to get hold of. But it was a unique force in that time where it should have ran longer and it should still be on because it was amazing. What was it like working on Unspun with Matt Ford?
That was it was fantastic, you know, because it was. I mean, I agree with you. I think it was a really, really good show, and there's not. It's almost like broadcasters are afraid to do satire at the moment in that respect because they just get piled on. Um, it was a really interesting time as well because it was just after Brexit, and obviously I've got, you know, vested interests in that living in France, but being British. So it was a lot of fun. It was really, it was actually, you know, it was really interesting because it was being filmed at the same time that they were filming Pointless. So while I was wandering up and down the back corridors waiting for my spot on Unspun, Richard and Alexander Armstrong were there getting their suits steamed. So it was in the one hand it was really, you know, you've got to be politically on edge, on the other hand it was quite again a cozy environment.
Yeah.
Um, but it's such a shame that that hasn't continued. Yeah, I really enjoyed that show. I
And
still get abuse for it, even now, 9 years on or whatever it was when I recorded that.
and and it's one of those shows that even though it might not be as relevant, Rock the Week's not relevant anymore, but it still airs all the time. So I do feel ashamed that it's not available on a catch up.
Yes, I see what you mean. Yeah, I hadn't actually thought of that. Yeah. I don't know. It depends what rights they had for people at the time. I'm so, I never look at a contract. That's my problem. I should really have a look at these things.
Yeah, because it's one of those shows that you would still enjoy now. It's like when you watch old episodes of MASH Report, you still enjoy it, even though it's
Yeah,
not as widely relevant, but it's still enjoyable. And I think that
sure.
that's what Dave are missing because they've got that back catalogue of stuff that they used to air instead of just rerunning House of Games and QI all the time. And
Yeah.
every week and every so often, an episode that aired like 4 weeks ago of Have I Got News for You? But I do think that it should still be in the realm because it's even though it might not be it might not be as relevant. Some of the points he makes are still probably
Absolutely. It's still satire, and satire is supposed to make you think. So, you know, I mean, we still laugh at satirical stuff that like Hogarthian actions and Punch magazines from the late 1880s or whatever. It's a style that's relevant rather than the actual news story that it's covering sometimes.
And why do you think that there's not enough satire and TV in the UK, but there is a shed load in America? I know that it's probably to do with the political side, but why do you think that America are more happy to share the satire and we're not too keen on it?
I don't know. I think that's a really interesting question because it's not like they're in a safer environment than we are over here. And I do think satire is under attack over there, as you can see with, you know, Stephen Colbert being cancelled or his contract being cancelled from next year. And I think there is an attack on things like that I mean, I certainly noticed this as a comedian, that I didn't do a great deal of satire, but obviously I had to talk about Brexit because all my life experiences at the time were with that. I was traveling between what was Europe and what was the UK or whatever. And I noticed that very quickly after the Brexit vote, because of the division that it caused, that this great reputation that the British have always had for being able to laugh at themselves and the self-deprecating thing, they kind of lost a lot of that because people are so entrenched in their views and so unwilling to hear anything that is not their own view that they're not prepared to laugh at it. So satire doesn't have a broad audience anymore. It's already preaching to the converted in a way and just annoying other people. So I think that TV commissioners are reluctant to put out programming that might be that divisive and seen as political.
And I think that what you can tell with the differences is that John Oliver, who is the really good example because he's British, but then has the show in America. I think that he works really well because he's not he keeps it as real as possible, and you can
Yeah,
when the jokes are, but you can tell that you're not watching an American program. You can tell that it's him
yeah,
personally. It's
yeah,
not that he has to adapt for Americans. He's still doing
sure.
a version of comedy, and people are going, "Well, we understand that." Do you think that's a good thing that we're showcasing that the British can still do satire even if it's
Oh, definitely. And I think also it works especially well with John in that he's essentially an outsider looking in. And in a sense, that has a double-edged sword because one, some people go, well, this is an outsider looking in. Maybe we should think about this. And then the other side of that is that people will go, he's an outsider. What the hell has it got to do with him? But but there's also, it comes via a British voice. And the Americans will listen to a British voice. It's as simple as that, because they love the British accent, and John does it so well. Um, that I think that's one of the reasons, apart from the fantastic writing on the program, but that's one of the reasons why he's so successful with it.
and I think that he does it really well. And then what makes me laugh, and this is a sidetrack briefly, but it's the way that he can go from being really heavily political, then really annoying Alex Horn on the Horn Section TV show on Channel 4, where he could appear in the toilets trying to beg for more screen time on Channel 4. So I do think he's got that range of really good political stuff and then just really weird sort of, I want to be on this program, get me on it,
I
appear.
think I think that's really good, and but I also think that's really important that satirical comedians or satirical pundits don't become so separated, pompous, even that they can't have the lighter side, that it's not all about satire and politics. The comedy doesn't have to all be about that, that it can be about other things.
And moving away slightly from that, one of the things you've done that in a category of a lot of like it's becoming a huge category in itself, and it's becoming really popular. And not just because Richard Osman's attempted to be the juggernaut of it, but because Richard Osman knew how to create like a subdivision of the genre, so it's not too heavy on the murderous
Yeah,
side. It's a
yeah.
lot more calmer. Where did the idea for your book series come from?
It came solely because I wanted to read a book. Sorry, I wanted to write a book that I wanted to read. When I started writing it, Richard's book wasn't out. His first one wasn't out, and it was just one of those things that you could almost say after 25 years in comedy at the time, I finally got my timing right. That that became a thing. That cozy crime with humor became a thing all of a sudden, and because of Richard, it became a much bigger thing. It was never an intent. I mean, I'd written before. I'd written stuff about being about living in France and being on the road as a comedian. I had written a serious crime novel which has been published since, but it was more solely about wanting to write something that I would want to read. That was more me, and Still had elements of France in it, but still had elements of comedy in it. So it wasn't ever going to be a huge stretch. But I just wanted to entertain myself and almost cheer myself up as well. It was really important to kind of, and I still get this because I'm writing book 6 of that series now, that it's a place to escape to. And I find that I mean that helps enormously.
And why do you think that and I know there's a lot on TV. You've got your 2 p.m. cozy slot, cozy murders, which is a whole nother issue in itself because why is murder now cozy? But why do you think that people enjoy reading something that isn't like so horrific? It's like gentle, but
Well,
it's
the answer to that is partly it's in the title and in the genre. It's cozy. You're not going to get upset by it. But one of the main reasons I think that this kind of sort of lighter book, lighter crime novel is successful is that there is always a resolution, always a satisfying resolution. Nothing is left hanging. You get to the end of the book, everything in the book has been resolved. And which is not like real life, as we know. Things are hanging all over the place, and it's not like a lot of harder thrillers and psychological noir stuff where you can be left with questions that are upsetting you. Cozy crime solves, it starts off creating some problems, and by the end of the book, those problems are solved. And I think people really do like that idea that things have a resolution. I think that's really important.
and do you think that it helps to sort of like if people have upsettingness with all the well murder and crime, do you
Hmm.
think this helps to sort of soften it to say that yes, it's still a bad thing, but you can sort of enjoy it in a sense of it
Yeah, I think so because there's always a sense of curiosity. I mean, the human beings are naturally curious. And the vast majority of human beings are very decent, law-abiding people who probably won't murder people. I mean, I put the probably in because you never know. But I, so there's a kind of peeping Tom aspect to it about how would people react to certain events, and what cozy crime does is that there are certain rules to cozy crime when you write them. In that, for instance, a murder. It doesn't really matter how gruesome the murder is, as long as the gruesome stuff isn't shown. You can just hear about a murder and a head might be stoved in by what I mean in my last one, some bloke got his head stoved in by one of those pétanque balls, French heavy metal pétanque balls, and you can say that and people go, oh, that's not funny, but yes, it is quite funny, but not if you're actually discovering the body and seeing the mess, and so that's what I mean is you don't have any of that on screen. And I just think people have that, it feels slightly removed in that sense that it's not going to upset you, like I said.
and I think that my favorite example of what I would describe as your cozy murder is that there's a TV show that's not widely available but should be, where it's Angela Merkel and she left politics to become a Miss Marple type character. And so it's like Detective Merkel, and it's the Angela Merkel of German fame.
Yeah, I've seen the books. I've seen the books over here. I didn't know it'd been made into a TV series. I've seen the books. A good friend of mine, Sophia Bennett, she writes fantastic cozy crime books, but it's the Queen, the late Queen, at various stages in her life, being the bit of a Miss Marple herself, and it's open, and people have no problem with that. Whereas if you stuck the Queen in some psychological noir, I think the Daily Mail might get upset.
Yeah, it's the Queen in the Bridge.
Yeah.
She is the Danish counterpart, and she's trying to solve the crime. And there's a section of many things. So there's images and the Queen holding a gun, and you can do all sorts with it. But and I think do you think that that's why cozy works because you can like bend it so that you can make it
Yes.
yeah because so it's like at 2 p.m. you could have someone being murdered, but you sort of you see the thing happen, but you don't see the actual murder take place.
Absolutely, absolutely that. And but you see, the thing is, again, when you're writing the stories of that, your basis for the story still has to have essentially the facts. You know, you can put it this way: a cozy crime writer's Google history is just as dark as any other crime writer's Google history. It's just that we don't put in all the stuff that we've researched. So it's yeah, you can do it. It's not as serious. It doesn't affect you because you're not getting the details that are going to make you feel sick, you know, or upset by that image in your head.
And when you're writing the book, when you first started, let's go with that one. When you first started writing the books, did you watch a varied selection of in the cozy department and read them to get a rough idea of what type of things you do?
Not really, not really, because it was already there. It was already there in my, you know, my wife and I often will sit down and watch a cozy crime thing like a Poirot or a Marple, you know, the Inspector Allain mysteries, all of those things that are on TV and repeated all the time. And I've always been an Agatha Christie fan anyway, so it was always there. I did kind of you know, when I wrote the first one and then it goes off to an editor, I did kind of get a lesson then in how various things work within crime writing. And that helped and made a difference. But it was the ideas and stuff and certainly the setup for it was already in my head really. I read an awful lot of stuff now, Cozy Crime, because I get sent so many books for people wanting a blurb, a quote on the book, and so I do get sent. I don't think I've read a book of my own choice for about 4 years.
And I know that a lot in Scotland, but I think it's generally that crimes are becoming a massive. Like I know it was big before, but it's becoming even bigger. Do you think that it's becoming so popular because people want to live in those worlds without have to experience them themselves, and they want to know how detectives go about. So even though they might not be 100% accurate to exactly
Yeah.
word for word how it happens, do you think that's why there's an audience that are I'm not going to use the word, but I am going to use it, but gagging for it? Do you think that's why there's an audience gagging for it?
I think it's just a really popular way of telling a story, and the stories of it has a very simple, unlike you know, like a soap opera or a family drama, or many other kinds of drama. They're constantly unfolding as life constantly unfolds. Whereas with a murder, that you have, you know, you have an incident, you have a solution, and in the middle you get from one to the other, but you always have an end point. And so people like the fact that they can just switch off for an hour and a half, 2 hours and go, that's fine. You know, I'm not going to get murdered in my bed tonight, but I've just watched what will happen if I do. Um, so, so there's that, you know, I just think that it lends itself really well to stories in the same way that you've always got a number of hospital dramas on television because again because somebody will come on with the complaint hopefully you'll get the complaint whatever medical issue will be resolved but you go from A to B and you have your story so it's things like that that are really self-contained that you don't have to then ponder about for the rest of the week.
And you are out a lot of people and like watching crime and all those things before they go to bed, which not necessarily is always the right thing to do. And the one example I can give is that my family had watched. I don't know if you've seen, but a program called Dark, which is a German, like it's like a crime sci-fi thing where once you've watched the first episode, that's the last time you understand what's going on. The rest of the time, you don't know what year it is. You don't know
Right.
where they are. You
Okay.
don't think you can even see what's going on because it's that dark. No pun intended, but it's like a really very dark German thing. The
Yeah.
only colours you can see is yellow. But it's one of those where once you've watched it, because it's so creepy and the music's all eerie,
Yeah.
everything's weird afterwards. And our Amazon Echo started making noises. Not so long after we watched it, we're all going off to bed, and then you just hear just gentle sounds coming from the Echo that you didn't turn on. And I think that enhances because then you enjoy the program more because you know
Right. Okay. I wouldn't like
that.
that just for bedtime though, frankly.
No, you wouldn't, but you can just imagine you're in that world, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that time travel really does exist, no matter how weird it gets. And
Yeah,
do you think that's why it's a popular thing because people love the fact that they don't know what's going to happen, and they're trying to be their own detective.
absolutely. Absolutely right. You know, I mean, one of the, certainly from our point of view, I can't speak for everybody, but when my wife or our family sit down and watch a who done it, we're trying to guess who did it. You know, you're not just going to sit there passively until the end and going, oh, it was them. You know, there's no point, is there? You know, just go straight to the last page, as it were. So, yeah, there's an element of interaction with it that I think that is important. Where, you know, whereas if it's really, really dark, you might not necessarily want to interact.
Yeah, and do you when you're writing your books, do you sort of because you're writing in this cozy manner, do you sort of make it sure that the audience, the readers, can also join in and yes, do you make
Oh
sure?
yes. Oh, absolutely. It's an important part of plotting the book is any whodunit book is to lay little clues. You can't cheat. You can't cheat. You can't just go to the end and then a character that hasn't been in the book at all turns up goes, well, I did it. You've got to leave little clues for the reader or the audience to do that. Red herrings as well to send them off in a different tangent. You know, but that happens in more serious crime as well. I mean, because I write two different series. I write cozy crime, but I also write a slightly darker procedural series. You've still got to go by the same rules. You know, you've still got to allow the reader to think that they might crack it first.
And I do think that crime is an easy way to develop jokes, and I said this quite recently, but you have the element of a Vera where by the end of it there's a solicitor sat next to the person that did it, but the solicitor then doesn't do anything because the person just confessed to the
Right.
murder, confessed that they've done it, and explain how they did it, why they did it, and you're going to see solicitors looking at the woman. I wouldn't have recommended to say that, and then they've obviously been arrested and prosecuted because they've
Yeah. Yeah.
or why they did it, when they did it, how they did it, and why they didn't tell the police at the time that they did it, and why they only now just confessing and crying
Yeah.
about it whilst the solicitor does everything. But do you think that that's why comedy works so well for crime? Because when you watch serious crime, there's so many elements you can poke fun at.
I think there's an element of that, and I also think that I think that some crime writing is so po-faced in a sense, and it's lacking in any humor that people have deliberately gone through that process to make it as dark as they possibly can. But real life always has humor, no matter what the situation, no matter how bad the situation. Some people in that situation will have their coping mechanism as jokes, a way of being sarcastic or whatever the situation is. So yeah, it goes hand in hand with humor, and in the end, writing writing a crime book isn't that different from writing a joke, or an observational story, in that you have your beginning, you have your middle, you have your little red herrings. You're going to send the audience off in slightly different directions, bring them back. You'll have a callback, and in the end, you get the big laugh, the reveal, or whatever it is. So they're not that dissimilar in terms of discipline.
And I've spoken to a few writers, and they've all got different variations of this. But when you're writing your more serious crime, do you listen to like a spooky or like a crime-based soundtrack, or do you just write it on your own without any sound to distract you?
I don't have any sounds when I'm writing, but when I'm writing the more serious one, I'll read more serious books. It's almost like it's a frame of mind, really, that I like to keep my reading light when I'm writing the cozies, but I need to sort of access my darker side more easily when I'm writing the procedurals, and that comes from what I read. And I'll read a lot of non-fiction when I'm writing the serious stuff, because the real world is horrendous. So it puts you in a bad mood in a sense, but it means that you can get into the sense of the mood of the situation.
Yeah, and moving slightly away from the crime, but it is still Crime and Justice that the program's come to an end. What was it like appearing on the BBC Radio 4 comedy series, The Now Show?
Do you know, it was a really it was such an amazing experience because it's one of those things that had been around for years and you wanted to be involved in. And I always, I love a lot of Radio 4 stuff and to go and work in the Radio 4 theatre, the BBC, and just enjoy myself, just let rip, really. The oddest thing is that a lot of that stuff that I did on the Now Show that time was actually material I was using at the time as a stand-up. So it wasn't difficult to do it in front of an audience. I felt no nerves for that at all, and it wasn't like I'd just written it that day or whatever. It was stuff I was doing in the clubs at the time. And then one of the bits had to be re-recorded, part of it, just like a 2 minute thing in the middle, and I couldn't do it without looking at my script. And it felt really odd. Whereas it was something I'd done, a number of times on stage, but I couldn't do that retake without my script. It was really odd. It was quite an odd thing. But then, that there is an odd thing in comedy as well, where you put me in front of an audience, I will do something. I will find a way, whatever is going to happen. But if I can't see the audience, like the most nerve, I used to, when you do like an off-stage announcement for another comic, like you're standing behind a curtain at the side of the stage, and your job is just to say, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage," blah blah blah. And I'd stutter, I just couldn't deliver it at all because I wasn't seeing the audience as such.
And why do you think that not? Why do you think radio comedy is so popular still, even though you might not get as many people listening to the radio as you once did?
I think because it's more personal. Television, obviously you can watch it on your own, and I think a lot of people do anyway, but you might be in your car on your own with the radio, so it feels like it's directed at you as an individual rather than as a mass event, which is what live comedy actually is anyway. If it's done well, you may be in an audience of whatever, but it feels like it's a personal message to you if the performer is skilled enough, that is anyway. So I think I mean, I love radio, I love audio books. I prefer listening to sport on the radio than watching sport because I just feel that there's a sense of it being personal, but also it's your own, you're in your own atmosphere with it. And television, I don't always, I get very easily distracted with television, but less so with radio.
And you mentioned sport there, and I think that what makes radio sport more interesting is that you end up feeling that you're more connected to the commentators and you
Yeah.
listen to what they're saying. And on TV, you can easily just drown them out and then just get swept up in the actual sport. Do you think that that's what makes Radio 5 Live Sport
Mm.
commentating a lot more personal because you get what they're saying and you then learn more about the sport because you're actually
Yeah, I think so. And I also think there's an immense skill um, with being a radio commentator. And the problem, and it's also very different from being a TV commentator, but that has slightly changed over the years in that with TV commentary, you used to get periods of silence because obviously you're watching it. You don't need to be told everything that's going on all the time. And I think that has changed with TV commentary, that commentators for TV, certainly with football, feel like they can't give you a moment's peace. So if there's a slight downturn in the action, they'll spout you some nonsense fact like, oh, and this is the third time on a Tuesday in December that his laces have come undone since 19, it really winds me up. It really winds me up. Whereas I feel that radio commentators are really much more personable, almost like mates, if you see what I mean. It feels more like a conversation almost.
and that's why Alan Partridge, the commentator, worked so well because you could just take the Mickey out of something like that.
Absolutely.
And I think that that's where comedy helps is that you notice that these people taking it really serious, but then you can easily go, well, I can take the mickey out of that, and it's not being mean to them.
That's the thing. Anybody in any walk of life who takes things too seriously is setting themselves up for being for comedic fodder, frankly.
Yeah, and one of the other things you worked on that again is one of those things that it's in the realms of where radio comedy really does hit its stride, and I think with the when you see that there's more radio comedy than there is TV comedy, which is a sad thing,
Yeah.
it's also a good thing to help the radio medium. What was it like being on an episode of Four at the Store?
Wow. For at the store, I remember. I, do you know what? That was again. That was a really odd experience because that was a long time ago, and I hadn't been going that long, as far as I remember. But I knew that there were other people that night being recorded. I think Marcus Brigstock, and I did a couple of series of this, but the first one I did, I didn't know I was being recorded for Radio 4. And it was only afterwards that my agent said, "Oh yeah, I did a deal with them, and they put my whole set out. They put like 20 minutes out, and I was a bit peeved. I was a bit like, well, I got, I didn't get any money for that. So it was, and they were still repeating it 15 years later, um, on 4 Extra or whatever. And so it was always fun to do those things, but they're always the radio ones were more fun to do than the television ones, because the television ones were really quite just really manufactured. I did one years ago, the stand-up show for the BBC, and the audience just hated all of us. So, so it was, we all died that night. But when it actually came out, when it was actually, broadcast, we all kind of had a smile on our face as if it's going magnificently well. Um, so it's just not the medium for stand-up. It just isn't. The only medium for stand-up is live or occasionally a radio thing.
And why do you think that there's more? When I say more, I really do mean more. Why do you think there's so much more? That's a better way of wording it. Radio comedy than there is TV comedy.
I don't know. It'll have to be something to do with economics. I would have thought any kind of TV costs a lot of money, whereas radio comedy, it really is just sticking a microphone in a room. It's not. It's so much easier to do, I guess. I don't know. I was speaking actually to a TV producer recently, who was saying, apart from Live at the Apollo, there really is no other stand-up on television now, and I think that's really sad, because the clubs up and down the UK and people, really should get out and see them and support them. They are full of incredible talent.
Yeah, and I think that what was making that stride to help showcasing some of these. I don't know if you know it, but there's a streaming service that does it really well called Next Up Comedy, and what they do really well is that when you hear when you know a lot about comedy, you hear about these like really amazing gig nights and these certain
Yeah,
venues that you wish to be there, but you're not always accessible to get there.
sure. Yeah.
With Next Up Comedy, they stream directly to those venues, so you can. So some of the biggest
Ah,
things that you think of. So when they did I'm gonna call it comedy wrestling, where a lot of comedians were pretending to be WWE wrestlers,
right.
or Alex on driving a massive ship and then getting Greg Davies to help, and all these things. But the thing you hear about, like the Frog and Buck and all these things, these
Yeah.
just on Next Up Comedy, and they also, and you can find new comics that you would not sort of see because it's on that
Yeah.
service. And do you think that that's a good thing that there is people out there that are trying to showcase the new talent?
Anything that makes stage stand up more accessible and also gives it some success is worth looking at, because it's, the circuit in the UK has been up and down and up and down, and currently I think it's fighting back now. But this is a tradition that the British have had for centuries of, like the wandering minstrel, as it were. And that's what modern stand-ups are. And it's a very difficult thing to do at times. At other times, it can be a really easy thing to do. But they're really putting the hard yards in, the people who are doing the circuit, and it's something that has to be protected, really.
And one of the things you've done that is brilliant, but it's one of those mediums that's steadily, well, it's not steadily growing, it's massively growing. It's like they say that one born every minute. It's probably the same thing with this medium. Where did the idea for your podcast? So the joke there is one podcast born every minute. Where did the idea for your podcast So British come from?
It was just I was writing the blogs. There was an element of needing to, and this is what's changed massively, is that you have to produce things all the time, that you have to have content, as it's called. You have to keep creating content. It was a case of, on the one hand, making sure that your voice was still getting out there, but on the other hand, making sure you sort of uh, self-acknowledgement that you are actually still around yourself, that that this wasn't the end of your career, that you could still do something. So the idea just came from, I was writing the blogs and I just thought, well, why not? I'm here on my own. I had a studio set up in my office. Just do it yourself. I've got nothing, literally nothing else to do. So so do it.
Yeah, and you mentioned there about your blog, and I know that Richard Herring's like probably like the only other person I can think of that really loves to advocate that these things will have helped him years down the line because he's remembered what's happened on that day. To know,
Absolutely.
go back.
Yeah.
Why do you think that blogging is a lot more of a better medium for a performer than it would be to write something down in, let's say, a diary?
Because it's performative, I think. It's your voice as you use a performer that comes through in the blog, rather than doing a diary, which I think you can also get very bored of quickly. But it's true about remembering stuff. I mean, the first two books I wrote, like I say, about living in France, but being a comedian in the UK, they came from blogs, and a publisher read the blog and said, "Would you like to turn them into books?" And that's what I did. And we still, there have been occasions, because the first two were published initially about 12 years ago. They were re-released last year. And there's a new one coming out next year, but they were published a while ago, so our kids were very young. And we still now go, we tragically go back to those books to see what order certain things happened in. To, and I think, what was it? My middle son asked me, he was asking me questions about when he was young the other day. And I said, you know what? I can't remember, but I've got an audio book if you want to have a listen to the stories of your early life.
And do you think that that's a good thing that you wrote down these things? Because I know that some people take photos, some people make videos. Do you think that, from your point of view, that it's helped you not only to remember important events, but to also get the enjoyment out of that into writing, so you know that you're using your skill and your love of writing to help the love of that memory you had in the.
Absolutely, absolutely, and not just the love of it, but a cathartic effect as well, because it wasn't all happiness during those times. Sometimes some of those things were really tough, and you'd always try and find the humor out of it. But to write it all down was actually a way of dealing with it as well. And the fact that other people loved it or could relate to it in whatever way was an added bonus. But the reason I first started doing it was, there was one day that was just such a crazy day, and then I had to get a Ryanair flight to London to go and work that evening, and I needed to write it down because my brain was going to explode if I didn't get everything down. And I put that on at the time. I think this would have been 2010, 2011. I put that on as a Facebook note, just as a, this is where I am, and I'm going to a gig, and I haven't got a clue what's going on in my head. And people really liked it, and so I carried on. So it works in so many ways, that thing, as a performer's voice, as a cathartic experience, and as a memory nudger.
Yeah. And for people that have got this far in the interview, now from your your experience as a performer and as a writer, what advice could you give people that are looking at these things, going, how can they get into the world of blogging now? Even the boomer blogging technically not as boom as
Mm.
it once was. What advice, from your point of view, would you give someone that wants to join that world?
It's very difficult. The only thing you can do is just keep doing it. Just do it. Don't overthink it. Don't think about how many numbers you get in. Why are you doing it? Ask yourself the question of why you're doing it. Don't have great expectations, but just keep doing it. It's the same with writing and with doing stand-up. The important thing, and I used to say this to young stand-ups who'd say, what do you do? I mean, how do you go out and look for material? What do you, no, the thing is you live life. And then, situations will come to you. And if you're that way inclined as a stand-up or as a comedy writer, you'll be able to turn those situations into humor. So, just live life, but be disciplined about what you want to do. Just yeah, if you want to write, you've got to write.
And do you think that as a comedian, when you don't, because some comedians might gig every single night of the week and then run out of material quite quickly, do you think that not gigging all the time helps with your material later on because you've then had that time in between for things to happen?
I think so. Some comedians wanted to work and still do want to work every night, and partly that is because they're incredibly needy individuals who need to be given the love of an audience every single day. Some people do it because they stay in good form by doing it, and I can understand that as well. But I always felt that, material aside, I didn't want to gig every night because I was too tired, and if I got too tired, then some of the shows wouldn't be good enough. So it just works for different people. Everybody has a different stand up is such an individual and essentially quite a lonely pursuit that you have to find whatever makes you happy out of it and how you do it. But there's no rules to it, and nobody should ever say there are rules to stand because there are no rules to stand up. You just got to find your own way.
And now that people have got this far in the interview and they've got to know more about you, what upcoming projects that you've not under NDAs, because the evil NDAs are everywhere, can you talk about that you're excited for people to either see, hear, read, or listen to?
Right. What in Oct oh, okay. So in October, I was last year at the end of last year, I was asked to write a short story because there's a new anthology of P.G. Wodehouse work. P.G. Wodehouse is the greatest comic writer of all time, and I'm a huge devourer of Wodehouse. He's my kind of author. But if you're down, you just break glass in case of emergency and bring down the Code of the Worcesters and have a read. So there's a new anthology of 12 people who were asked to do a Jeeves and Wooster story, and I was one of those who was asked. So that comes out in October. Other people on that are Frank Skinner, Roddy Doyle, um, Alan Titchmarsh. It's an eclectic mix, but it should be fun, and I think that that'll be a good book. That's coming out in October. I've got the paperback of Dead Behind the Eyes coming out in October as well. And then next June, I've got three books coming out, and I must get around to writing two of them. One of them is called A Very French Corpse, which is one of the serious procedurals with Jules Lombard. Then Death and Deja Vu, which I'm writing now, and the third book about, in fact, you mentioned it earlier, Monsieur So British. There's a book coming out called Monsieur So British, which is about, our life over here in the last few years. So there's lots coming out, and it's, I will get around to writing them at some point, I hope.
Yeah, and you mentioned the short story collection with the likes of you, Frank Skinner, and Alan Titchmarsh. Do you think that that's going to be an interesting development because you've got you and Frank Skinner that are very well known for comic writing and for
Yeah.
performing? Do you think it'll be an interesting mix to add the gardener Alan Titmarsh in the
I think
middle.
so. I think that because it's specifically with Woodhouse and specifically with Jeeves and Wooster, and the appeal with Jeeves and Wooster is so wide. I think it's really interesting. I think so. I mean, Alan Titchmarsh. I've never met Alan Titchmarsh in my life, but I know he has written books. So it's everybody who's touched by P.G. Woodhouse, I think, wants to have a go at it, and so it's really great that we've been given that chance.
And I think that that's what's really good about authors' work is that when you have a really popular author, you get loads of fans. And I think that what really, for me, as an outsider from that, you sort of see that the love of the characters is still there when you read that the fans officially, with the full license of the people, have written these books.
Hmm.
What I think that does a similar thing is the Miss Marple short story collection, where it's different crime writers have wrote different Miss
I
Marple.
saw that. Yeah, I saw that.
It's those type of things that sort of say, well, that shows not just to the writer, but it shows to the audience how much the author is beloved. And
Absolutely right. Yeah,
you don't get that in a lot of media. In the world of Doctor Who, you've got unofficial fan stuff, and they do that not officially. Uh,
yeah.
and we do it brilliantly. Not to my own horn or anything, but I think that it shows how much that means to people. Do you think that's a good thing to for the family or for the people that run the estate of the authors?
I think so. I mean, hopefully it's not just about money, but it's about, bringing somebody. I mean, say for instance, somebody's a huge Frank Skinner fan, but they've never read Woodhouse before. They might then go on to read some Woodhouse after reading Frank's story in that book. And I think that, from my point of view, the more people who read Woodhouse or Marple, then the better the world's going to be, frankly, because those are genius writers and genius characters.
And one of and before we come to the next point, but one of the things that really fascinates me, that annoys me that it's only an American thing, but there's an audio book on Audible where it's the official voice and it's in the same quality that it once was. Someone probably remastered, but it's Agatha Christie reading her autobiography. But she,
Really?
so it's only available on Audible America. I don't know why,
Okay.
but it when you listen to the preview, it really is the same quality that it was whenever she managed to release it.
Amazing.
And it is her voice, so it's no AI. It's not the AI masterclasses that they're doing with Agatha Christie as AI teach people how to write books. The BBC have questioned that very much.
Yes.
But this is not AI. This is her official work, and it was
Right.
released yonks ago. But it's her official voice, and
Well, yeah. I mean, she's been dead nearly 50 years.
yeah,
So.
and I think that's one of the greatest things that you can do because back then that probably wasn't the done thing to do as much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, John Pertwee recording audiobooks for Words of Gummidge, but you sort of not as common. And do you think that that's a good thing that we have that in the archive of Agatha Christie reading her own autobiography?
Oh God, absolutely. I mean, I love audiobooks and I collect older audiobooks if it's got the authentic voice, like the David Niven reading David Niven's autobiographies. I've got James Mason reading The Third Man, things that they're really great voices that you kind of grow up with, but they're still accessible. Really important. I mean, for me, I spend a lot of time searching for things like that. There are a couple, the Myrna Loy autobiography and the Bette Davis autobiography were both recorded but read by impersonators. So that's slight, but and once you know that, it's there's a slight element of disappointment with it because no matter how good it is, it's not them.
Yeah,
So if you can find anything that has the authentic voice on it, is an amazing
yeah.
thing. Yeah.
And Bernard Crimmins was before he passed away. He was recording his own autobiography, so he'd got so you can tell that he wasn't well at the time because he'd recorded
Right.
Bob's and because there wasn't enough to create a full chapter. And sadly, they can't use any of that audio, but that still exists. So
Yeah.
eventually we'll be able to generate that into an archive because
Yeah.
at the end of everything will be an archive. And I think that it's interesting when you get these people that are no longer with us doing these things. And the one thing that's interesting is when you get actors who play the characters on TV, like Wurzel Gummidge, he
Yeah.
plays Pertwee, but he reads it as himself when it's not Wurzel, but when it's Wurzel, he's doing it in his Wurzel voice, which
Yeah. It's the same thing when David Suchet does the Poirot audiobooks. So obviously, he's doing the narration parts and the other parts in various actory voices, and then you've got obviously the seminal TV Poirot doing his own bits.
and I do think that the world of audiobooks are really fascinating, and having the actors back to do these things.
Yeah,
Or the Victoria Wood one has Jasper Reeves in it, if I've said his name right, who wrote the book with Victoria, but it also has Victoria's friends reading chapters. That
right.
makes it more lovable because you know that
Yes.
she
Okay. Yeah.
was during the writing of the book because she
Yeah.
has someone else writing for her, but
Yeah.
you've got the authentication of the friends that knew her the most reading
Yeah.
the chapters that they might have appeared in that chapter, and and I think you feel more connected
Yeah.
that world, and then you find out that, let's say, David Suchet was a fan of Agatha, so did that thing where he followed one of the adventures for more for he did that documentary series
Yeah.
where
That's right.
he
Yeah.
did it. And when you're recording, do you think that's why where audiobooks are more popular? Because you've done your own audiobooks.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's why they're popular? Because not only are you enjoying the book, but you're also enjoying it in a different experience than you would have if you read it yourself.
Yeah, I do. I do. I think that people get really engaged with them, and also it's a bit like radio, in that people feel like that it's an intimate experience, and if they're done really well, it can be, it can be a really enjoyable experience, but really personal. Again, I mean, I enjoy reading my audiobooks. There's a lot of prep goes into them because I'm not an actor. Performing comedy is very different from acting. But because I wrote the books, I know what I wanted from that character. So they are authentic, and I get a lot of feedback on the audiobooks, which is always, lovely to hear. Yeah, I love audiobooks. I listen to them every night.
Yeah, and I think when you listen to an autobiography by that person, you get more of you feel for them, and you can tell in their voice what happened to
Oh,
them.
absolutely. For instance, in the David Niven "The Moon's a Balloon" autobiography, he does cry. Um, and I did the same. I did the same with the second of the French books that I wrote. There was a particularly sad episode, and I just couldn't get through it. We had to keep stopping the recording because I was in tears, remembering how painful this episode was. And it's there. It's essentially there on the recording.
Yeah, and you get sort of exclusives as well. So if you have joint readers, so like for Rob Beckett and Josh Widdicombe's book, because
Mm.
it was a joint book and there was a lot of images in it, you can sort of tell that they took care in the audiobook. They added interview when there's must be I've not actually read the physical book, but there will be sections in it where they interview their wives, and but instead of them just reading it out, they've
Yeah.
got the audio recorded of that, and you sort of feel more connected to that
Yeah.
world, and that
Absolutely, yeah. They've made proper effort with it, which is the same as Mortimer and Whitehouse did with the Gone Fishing audiobook as well.
yeah,
Yeah,
and I
excuse
do
me.
think that before we move on, I do think that the audiobook, I've heard a preview of it because I'm slightly wary of how you can do it, but I do like the idea that they've got the actual owner of the gone fishing dog to record
Ted.
the autobiography,
Yes.
and not actually got Paul Whitehouse doing a Ted impression reading the book.
Where's my briefcase? Yeah.
That would have been funny, but it you sort of feel more it's more authentic coming from the owners that actually own the
Yeah,
dog.
absolutely.
You
Yeah.
learn more of behind the scenes, even though the book's witty and humorous because it's a poor biography.
Yeah.
You sort of just feel more connected to the origins of.
Yes, yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And do you think that's why there's a lot more audiobooks around because it's not only an accessible tool for a wide selection of people, but it's also a homage to these brilliant books.
Yeah, I just think people want the authenticity of it. I think, people generally when people are reading, they have the images in their mind anyway. And some people want to get an audiobook of a book they've already read to see if they thought of it the same way. So it's because books reading it can be quite a personal thing as well, a personal interpretation. So it's something that people listen to them for all kinds of reasons. So I know some people who listen to audiobooks because they are going through a really bad time and they want distraction. I know other people who listen to audiobooks who are lonely people and find that it's company. So there's many reasons why people do it, and the fact that it's so popular, I think, is really interesting. But then people are spending more and more time um, kind of isolated a little bit, I think, and want that company.
And long may they continue, because A,
Yes.
are amazing, and B, the second reason why I would believe that audiobooks are amazing is because nowhere else could you listen to the whole collection. Well, you probably could if you get on CD if you're quick enough, but nowhere else could you listen to the whole collection of Claire in the Community at the same time as reading War and Peace. No other platform has Claire in the Community and then War and Peace. I mean, what more?
That's quite a difficult juxtaposition, that one.
It is. It is. It's like if you listen to one episode of Claire in the Community on the way there and on the way back from you listen to War and Peace. Man, that'll be a journey and a half. Want to be in those shoes. Well, if I was weren't wearing shoes whilst driving, I'd be really concerned. And I'll be questioning their sanity. So, without giving away your home address, where can people track you down online?
I've got my website, ianmore.info, and then all the socials, unless there's some more have sprung up while we've been talking, which is highly likely, frankly, because they come and go very quickly. But I'm Ian Moore, author on Facebook, Instagram, Threads. What was the other one? Blue Sky, TikTok, X, whatever's going. I'm hawking my wares around the whole lot.
Yeah. And so there we have it. Another marvelous, excellent, tremendous, wonderful, and extraordinary, and a supercalifragilisticexpialidocious interview. Trying to fit all the alphabet there in one go. Even though I probably could have attempted to say the Welsh town name, but I would have been here for 4 million more years. That's trying to say the first four letters, let alone the rest of the word. So there we have it. More interviews by me. Yes, you'll never leave. I'll never leave. I believe you should turn me off. I do my own thing, but if you want to leave now, then press pause and leave. No, it's not my choice. Oh well, it's your own choice. If it was my choice, I would force you to listen to everything I ever say for the rest of time. But I am not a narcissist, and I'm not a controlling person, especially not from a million miles away from wherever you are. So there you have it, another wonderful interview. Thank you for listening, and remember, no, I've forgotten.